What's going on, everybody? Justin Thomas here from Top Shelf Fandom. I just got back from seeing The Last Duel, directed by Ridley Scott, written by Matt Damon, Ben Affleck for the first time since Good Will Hunting, with a third writer to write the female perspective of this Rashomon type drama. So this film has a lot of different things going on in it. If you are just somebody that's walking in off the street to see The Last Duel, the name might be a little deceptive, even though it is technically the last judicial duel in medieval France. This is based off true events. The source material for this film is from Eric Yeager, titled the same, The Last Duel. I did read it. I'm lucky enough to have Patreons. Special shout out to Susan Dunckel, who funded, and as far as I'm concerned, still funding, these videos for this topic that inspired me to make some more videos on my own channel and producing on a lot of other channels right now. But this topic really did pique my interest. I'm very much so immersed in the medieval life and the wanting to know as much and, pretty much consume as much information as possible. The book does give you a lot of insight into like the nitty gritty of how campaigns went, meaning like how many caresses did the French bring over to Scotland to raid across the border? 50. How much did they spend on a war horse and stuff like that. So full disclosure, The Last Duel has carnage, but it has the appropriate amount of carnage. And trust me, there's a lot of carnage, but it's the appropriate amount where it's actually happening according to these events that do take place during the 100-Year War. The last judicial duel takes place in 1386. This spans around, I think, 20 to 30 some years of two old best friends, John de la Cruge and Jack Legree. Cruge is played by Matt Damon. Legree is played by Adam Driver. This was originally supposed to be Ben Affleck playing Adam Driver's Legree, but COVID did halt this production, and it was, I actually think this turned out for the better. I think there's 4 really great performances in here, and 2, possibly 3 that could get nods. We're talking anything from Globes to Academy nods, in my opinion. So we have a really, really stellar cast. We have Ridley Scott, who takes up the director mantle. And when you get Scott, you get the cinematographer in the director. Lots of greens, lots of grays with a splash of color because he follows that law of diminishing returns, meaning, he withholds and withholds. And then when he gives you color, you really see it. And really embraces the emotion. We're dealing with 3 different perspectives of the same events. Cruge, Legree, and Margaret Tivell, played by Comer. It does lend itself to issues like redundancy and repetitiveness, and, it can get kind of like a little bit of a slog. It's subject to that type of stuff. I think they did a pretty good job with this. The narrative's pretty smooth. They fit it into 3 pretty clean acts. It's 2.5 hours. It's a little long, but I don't know. If anything, I maybe would have even made it 3 and explored a little bit more of Matt Damon's Cruge before this. What's going on with his family that he lost due to the Black Plague. So we're dealing with a very serious subject matter here, and it's nothing to joke around with. And this is not a hoot and holler movie by any means. I think anybody that will be a naysayer of this film will give it kind of like a Kingdom of Heaven synopsis. In the Kingdom of Heaven, you deal with modern day conventions being applied to 11th century Europe and, more specifically the Crusades. So you kind of run into some issues there. I actually still enjoy that film. If you can look over that issue, I don't think this film is guilty of applying modern day conventions or any type of morals or ethics or standard social behavior to a time where it's not applicable. I think that unfortunately evolution's not linear. We don't become more moral, ethical, or intelligent in a straight line headed for the sky. We stutter and we're hobbled quite a bit, and it's usually our own doing. I'd be interested to see everybody's opinion, hear everybody's opinion, and so forth. But in the spoiler-free review, I want to kind of just cover what it was to me as somebody that was coming in fully expecting to see the source material transferred through Matt, Ben, and Nicole Hofsner's writing, 2 males writing the 2 male perspectives and 1 female writing the female perspective. This is a Rashomon type narrative, which is a samurai film in which you get 4 different perspectives. And, so this does lend itself to being repetitive, and you do set yourself up for a little bit of failure if you take that approach, or at least a higher mountain to climb narratively. Dealing with perspective is everything in storytelling, and showcasing it in a film is done in a number of ways. So you could argue this is a very straightforward way, probably the most straightforward way you could do it, but also that doesn't make it easy. It kind of makes it complicated because you have to do it efficiently. My worry was we were going to get too many overlapping events, but you do need to see certain things through the eyes of Carouge, Matt Damon's character, Legree, Adam Driver's character, and especially Colmer, through her perspective. And there's only slight differences within these performances and within these events. And it's not apologetic. It's not, it doesn't apologize. It doesn't hold back. But at the same time, I don't know if it makes sense, but I'm just going to say this film has a lot of ambiguity to it that's very powerful, meaning it's not doing what I call the monster, not just me, a lot of people will call the monster box, putting Legree, who is accused of raping his old best friend's wife, in the monster box, of having his events through the eyes of Carouge and his wife, Margaret, just be like just overtly evil and just like so over the top of like, pretty much a cape wearing villain, twirling a mustache. This is a very serious subject matter, so it deserves a very serious depiction. And as we know, unfortunately, these situations aren't situations of good people versus bad people. These are people that do bad things, and these are people that then go about resolving these issues as we see throughout this film. And yes, we're all looking forward to the duel, and I won't spoil who wins, but no matter who wins it was not the right way to go about it, obviously, but for many reasons. And this is a film that is going to look at the trauma in a very realistic way. I found the trauma that Marguerite goes through to be depicted in a very strong way. Won't pretend to know what she feels like in her particular situation and so forth. I did find the hollowness, the way that, whether or not it's a post-traumatic experience from one singular from a singular event, or per se a chronic issue that you deal with. I think everybody can relate to this to some extent, and that life keeps going on around you. I think that sometimes it can almost feel like shell shock. I can't even fathom how somebody in her position would feel. But after, she goes through these terrible events, people are, having these mundane conversations, business as usual around her, not to mention the very, very unforgiving, unkind, unaware behavior of those who claim to love her, just either making it about them or just not caring whatsoever. So, I think that that's an important thing to depict. I think they did that very well. I think that this film depicts action very well, meaning battle fairly well. There was only one major offense of dual wielding swords, but the brutality of medieval battle is front stage and center in this. I didn't see any swords going through plate armor. I saw a lot of what looks like pretty much a car wreck on horses, and I thought that was pretty accurate. Anytime they go to an old battlefield and excavate it or do any of these archaeological digs, they find that most people die from blunt force trauma. You don't get a sword slashed right through your plate armor. That's why you got the plate armor on, but it still hurts like a motherfucker, and it might kill you. So very brutal, but not a action film. It's not an action film. There's the Last Duel, which is action-packed. There's a few injections of action throughout it for some minor skirmishes that happened during the 100-Year War, which this is the period in which this takes place in. But for the most part, this is a story about perspective, and a story I think that most people can walk away from. And, maybe that's not why they came to see it. Maybe they came for the carnage, but hopefully they'll leave. I do believe in films having messages, especially when there's such an overt one stated. I don't like taking that. I see it as just a weak way to analyze film, as I'm a big proponent, yes, of the story is yours, but also when you do have an overt message, which you rarely get, meaning like a statement from a director or writer about what they're depicting and what they're trying to do. As a critic, if you want to, make videos or do podcasts, I think you do need to kind of stick to judging the film on what they set out to do, how you think they did it, and then if you thought that was entertaining. So really quickly here, I thought it was entertaining. I think that it might feel a little bit sluggish to people that don't know what it's about and aren't as much of a nerd when it comes to like the details of these medieval court nuances or battles, you know, because it's called The Last Duel, so I could understand some people coming in with, especially with Scott behind it, thinking Gladiator, but no, it is not that, but it is a film that set out, I think, to provide perspective on what's unfortunately a very relevant issue of sexual assault today and the way it's dealt with. And yeah, we're not stabbing each other with swords or bashing each other's heads in with battle axes to solve these issues today, but I don't think they're being handled very well either. So I think that you could walk away from this film, if anything, looking at these situations with a little bit more empathy and understanding that there, isn't always a clear villain, but wrong was done and wrong needs to be addressed. The victim needs to be comfortable disclosing what happened to them, and it needs to be about what happened to them, not what that means for other people, besides the person that is the accused, who also needs due process. And it can't be left up to God like they leave it up to here, even though it's very entertaining in this sense. But again, this is a real event. I don't want to really make too many jokes about it, but you know, we need to deal with these things a little bit better, and monsters don't come out of a monster box. So it's unfortunate, but nobody really sees himself as a monster. So it's important to see perspective and important to not jump to the conclusion, but get to the conclusions in the best way possible without people being shamed on either side. And this is a film that, you know, it touches home. I think it's way too close to home than it should be. And that's why it's important. I think this is one of these films that these people behind the camera, meaning Affleck, Damon, Hofstadter, and Scott, and the people in front of the camera, can be very proud of, maybe for different reasons. But this is a film that I don't find it to be preachy. I find it to be effective. I think messages need to be delivered in film, both good and bad. You're telling a story. Story is effective in that sense. That's what it's about. It's about saying something. They're saying something here that doesn't make you want to hoot and holler. It makes you want to kind of just sit back and think about how we perceive things. You know, there are a lot of correlations, and I'll give you more in the spoiler review. But yeah, everything from basically, you know, a Twitter campaign in the sense of a court gossip, you know, act to give the claimant a little bit of juice per se to get their claim actually seen by a higher power. It's not the best way to go about things on either end, and definitely really respecting the power and its ambiguity with such a clearly, you know, horrible act. And I don't think that will make too much sense to people that haven't seen it, but I do suggest you go see it. I suggest you do kind of, you know, take your expectations down a little bit if you're just like going to see if you think it's going to be just this hack 'em slash 'em film. No, this isn't it, but this is a film of substance, and I think that this is a film that's worth seeing. I haven't been to the theater in almost 2 years actually, and I really did enjoy seeing this in the theater, and I thought the soundscape was really great. Things that can be lost on you just watching something on a small screen, like the sound of the hoofs of the horses coming, even if it's just 3 or 4 people, but you don't come in at one single person, you see how, you know, the intimidation factor and things like that. So yeah, definitely worth seeing in the theater. I'm not against the cinema surviving, but I'm also not one of those advocates that says everything has to be in the cinema. But I think that this is it's a film worth going to see. I think it's a film with a message, and I think it's a message that's delivered that's not an easy one to deliver, and it does it in a way that I do feel that, you know, you can say this film is entertaining and not feel bad about it. But yeah, so this is a serious message, and I think they do a pretty damn good job delivering it. So we will have a spoiler review coming out soon. Thank you guys for all the support. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you soon.